You are listening to the Break Time Tech Talks podcast, a bite-sized tech podcast for busy developers, where we'll briefly cover technical topics, news snippets, and more in short time blocks. I'm your host, Jennifer Reif, an avid developer and problem solver with special interest in data, learning, and all things technology. There were lots of exciting updates this week, the first being that I was inducted as a member of the Java Champions Group. I am truly honored to be a part of such an intelligent community of Java developers and to continue my learning journey. This week's podcast focuses on content and exploration with Java frameworks versus not. Then a super exciting development with a Java AI framework. Without further ado, let's get started. The first thing this week is that I was able to get a blog post out on the Neo4j Java driver object mapping feature. That's relatively new. I've mentioned this in previous episodes of the podcast, but I was now able to get a blog post detailing my process for putting together the code repository, showing how I created the application and so on. And I've also made some updates to the related Graph Academy using Neo4j with Java course. That will include some object mapping stuff as well. And that should be out and released next week. So if you're looking at taking the Graph Academy course, I would look at maybe first thing next week, seeing if you can take it then. It will have the object mapping included for that. Then I also have been playing around with, for the last few weeks or so now, with frameworkless Java applications and then some other frameworks as well with Java. I've created a couple frameworkless apps for various projects now, the Graph Academy course and the object mapping repository and blog post that I just put together, and some other things too. I followed a tutorial that was a pretty quick setup, pretty easy to follow along with. I'll have that linked as well. And I started playing around with creating a sample REST API this way as well. I haven't been super successful yet, but I'm still working through that and exploring it. What I found is that Spring has put together some super nice functionality for creating a REST API. It just makes it really easy and quick to spin things up. There's very little boilerplate, and they do a lot of that through annotations for creating your REST API endpoints. And this is super nice. I love doing it this way. I still probably will default back to the Spring way of doing things. However, I wanted to get some experience and explore the way other frameworks do it, as well as what does it all entail when you don't use a Java framework. So kind of getting the pros and cons of all of these options out there. And again, it's a lot more work I've found, and digging in and understanding what's going on under the hood, I found has been really helpful, if not just a little bit more time consuming than I'd hoped. The Java framework stuff that I've been working with, I have explored a bit about Javelin, which is a lightweight Java framework. That is being used right now in one of our Graph Academy Java courses, and I've had some previous experience with this. I'm kind of digging back in on it and playing with the framework and seeing what it offers and how it does things. That's been fun, just different than what I'm used to, so good learning there. I also have some plans for playing around with some other Java frameworks as well, things maybe like Quarkus or Spark or some other things too, and just seeing how creating applications with those work as well. And hopefully I'll have some content updates there and showcase what I've learned and the kind of stumbling blocks I've hit and so on. Again, Spring kind of abstracts a lot of this stuff away, so getting my hands messy with exploring what's out there and how each different framework or non-framework handles things has been a really good learning experience. I also wanted to add just a kind of learning tidbit that I've picked up. Many of you probably have the same tidbit as well. But each time I go in and need to make a bunch of changes to a code repository and application, I have a two-pronged approach that I want to take. So either I want to go in and just make very minimal changes one at a time, or I want to go in and revamp and almost rebuild from the ground up with all the things that I want to refactor and clean up and update and so on. And I've found through a blend of trying one over the other that even when I start with kind of the weed whacking approach where I just go in and hack a bunch of things away and then kind of build up from the ground up, that it's a much better approach actually to start with very small changes and just layer those on. So the more I do it, the more I realize that it's easiest to do changes in layers or in stages. For instance, the application that I'm reworking for the Java course on our Graph Academy, I've just started with dependency version updates and any syntax changes that I needed to make the code work. Again, I went in and started refactoring and revamping and updating a bunch of things, and it just ended up getting really messy very quickly. It's too easy to get into the weeds and cause really confusing Git diffs, blurring a lot of different changes into one massive one that then it's really hard to disentangle later. So I've worked my way back and brought myself back from the brink of that ledge a bit and tackled one very small thing at a time. So I updated the library versions first and then just fixed any syntax changes that needed to, things like deprecated methods and any other things that I needed to make the code work. And I went through and tested all the functionality to make sure it all worked, then pushed that change up to GitHub, and it's sitting and ready for review right now. And the next stage will be to go in and tweak some things for like refactoring code or best practices on the Cypher or the new Java updates or some of the library recommendations for improving and slimming down some of the functionality that's there and so on. I will do this in stages. That also makes it really easy to either commit or publish certain small modular changes and then to work on some other changes for a little bit longer. You're not having to wait on the change that's taking the most time in order to push all these things in. And you can always in GitHub say, hey, this change is dependent on this other one, so you don't end up pushing things and putting things in that aren't ready to go quite yet. But you can merge things that are already ready and just modularly improve things very minimally over time. This I find is a much better approach. I will probably have to continuously remind myself of this because as is human nature, we want to go in and we want to fix everything all at once, right? But I've just found that's not necessarily the most efficient or cleanest approach to updating and refactoring code repositories. Hopefully you'll find this as well, or maybe you're really good at that long swath, rebuild everything from the ground up. That's definitely an avenue that you could take as well. All right, the content I am super excited to get to today because Spring AI 1.0 is finally general availability release. There are a couple of blog posts I'm going to talk about. The first one being from James Ward at AWS, which was also co-written by Josh Long. And it walks through combining AWS, Spring AI, and MCP and some other things along the way as well. This blog post is called Spring AI 1.0 Brings AI to the Developer Masses. This was a super cool article and really well written. It covers an architecture of an agentic system with a couple of agent tools and an MCP server. And then it walks through building each component and getting them connected up into a full agentic system. There is also a cameo by Kotlin too. So if you're a Kotlin developer or exploring that, you'll get a little Easter egg, I guess, in that first bit of the blog. I also really loved the alignment of showing the architecture, how the process is working, the different tools and components that you would need, and then stepping through building each piece with some code examples. There is also a repository link for the full-blown version of the code. And then it also included the complete process of how real-life interactions would operate. So the user would send in a question, that gets routed to various services and the MCP server and comes back with all the information that it needs. I really liked this kind of practical and conceptual and actually coding walkthrough of how this would work in the real world. Then I will also link the official release blog post for Spring AI 1.0 as well. This one is kind of long, but the actual end of it is a list of contributors, which is quite long. It is well worth the read, though, for all of the content that's there. It walks through each of the components of an AI application, anything from the chat models that are available, the memory concepts, tools, retrieval augmented generation, MCP, and so much more. So if you want an overview of what all Spring AI provides and what it's doing and how it works, this is an excellent blog post for figuring out what's there. I found this super interesting and very helpful. There were several things that I want to explore more, and I already better understand just after reading this blog post. So I highly recommend it if you're just getting started into the AI world and you want an introduction on what's available in Spring AI or the different components and modules that you might need in an AI application. This is a good place to start. This week has been a highlight with some learning and progress on Java content through the object mapping blog, framework and non-framework application building, plus work on the Java online courses. Then the major announcement of Spring AI 1.0 general availability release with 2 helpful blog posts to walk us through what's there and how to build systems with it. I will talk to you next week. Thanks for listening and happy coding.